we generally see economic pain after oil hits $100.
Hey guys, I'm going to stream Kevin
from
Meet Kevin, and he has some really good footage. Check it out.
It could potentially mean that if we have a short incursion here, it could mean aggressive action by the Fed to quell inflation if the economy remains hot. If individuals are fearful and stop spending, then we could actually see inflation reduced by a reduction in aggregate demand. And when we see a reduction in aggregate demand, that is when we can reduce the incidence of the wage price spiral, but also we can reduce the potential inflationary impacts that we could have from high oil prices. Ukraine has declared a state of emergency. Keep in mind, if you want to submit articles or videos or commentary or anything, you can go to metkevin.com/chat.
Metkevin.com/chat. Right, Kevin's coming on now. Check this out.
And there is a Ukraine thread that you can join. Take a listen to this on Fox here for a moment.
Unfolding, and they had tried to. We'd seen many, the president himself there in Ukraine trying to calm the tensions, the feeling, the anxiety, saying, let's stay calm, let's continue to operate our daily lives. And, we've seen people say they stayed there because they have family, they have business interests, they have their employers, and people who wanted to try to continue life as normally as they could. It looks like as morning is dawning over there, that chapter is over. By the way, let's check back in with Lucas Tomlinson. He's on the ground in Lviv. What can you tell us from that vantage point, Lucas?
Just look at the folks leaving Ukraine. It's unfortunate that this is happening, presumably relatively late.
The capital, Kyiv, in northeastern Ukraine, and also Odessa. In the last hour, I told you an amphibious landing by the Russians was being prepared. I can now report that Russian Marines are on the ground in Odessa. So far, we've seen primarily missile strikes targeting what the Russians say key infrastructure and military targets. What we've seen in the past few weeks is this enormous buildup of Russian forces, 150,000 strong. Earlier in an address to his nation, Ukrainian President Zelensky said 200,000 Russian troops invaded. We're seeing three different lines of attack. We're seeing Russian forces come north from Crimea. We're seeing them coming from the separatist regions and also into Kyiv, just over the border in the Russian city.
Regarding Odessa, by the way, just take a look at this for a moment. This is on Twitter here. Look at this. This is a tweet here. This is individuals, it looks like civilians fleeing.
Hey.
Just you can see traffic moving here. Hold on. Yeah, there we go. Okay, sorry, I had the audio source. Spot. Explosions heard in Odessa. Let's listen.
Одесса.
Some of these are a little difficult to tell. This was also from Odessa. We saw this earlier already. Terrible. Got what looks like a fire here. Russian embassy staff seen burning classified documents. This is from Wars on the Brink on Twitter here. Really, Russian embassy seen burning documents. What was interesting was a couple days ago we did see the Russian, actually, it was yesterday, the Russian government order all individuals to leave Ukraine who work for the Russian government. I do imagine that some individuals were left behind, but this wouldn't surprise me. Again, Putin, if you're just now joining, has announced the start to military operations in Ukraine. This is being declared a special military operation, and it includes demilitarizing Ukraine. Explosions have now been heard in Odessa, Kyiv, and other cities, smaller cities. Oil is over $100 per barrel now, especially Brent over 101. S&P futures and NASDAQ futures down 2%. The Ukrainian president is urging Ukrainians not to panic, vows victory. It's worth noting that just yesterday, the Ukrainian government has enabled citizens to the right to bear all arms. This is this is something unique for Ukraine, not so unique for Texas, I realize that. Ukraine's president has also declared martial law, urging citizens, again, not to panic. Moscow has also suspended all trading across all markets as this begins. Let's listen to Fox here for a moment.
The first time we have heard these sirens since war erupted between Ukraine and Russia. Earlier in the night, there were at least 3 dozen strikes taking place in different locations around Kyiv. According to officials that we've talked to, these strikes were targeting military barracks outside of the city and also other key infrastructure around the Ukrainian capital. It is not just Kyiv that is under attack. The second largest city in Ukraine, Kharkiv, cities like Odessa and Mariupol in the south, taking fire from Russian forces. And we also understand that that amphibious assault that my colleague Lucas Tomlinson talked about is underway at this hour. Make no mistake, this is a full-scale Russian invasion into Ukraine happening right now, and the air raid sirens going off in the Ukrainian capital as we speak. Shannon.
All right, Trey Yangst.
Okay, so we are now receiving news that Putin is demanding forces in Ukraine surrender. Russian forces fired several missiles at Ukrainian cities, landed troops on the south coast on Thursday. Explosions could be heard in the pre-dawn quiet of the Ukrainian capital. Gunfire rattled near the capital's main airport. Russia is demanding an end to NATO's eastward expansion. Russia cannot feel safe, develop, and exist with the constant threat of emerging territories from NATO. This is from from Putin. The European Union chief has just vowed to hold the Kremlin accountable for these unjustified attacks. Unfortunately, so far we've seen nothing but talk from the West. And of course, this is increasing the risk to consumer inflation. Let's listen.
The different locations across the city have opened up their bomb shelters, including the metro system here in Kyiv, so that if there are civilians out in the streets, when these sirens go off and when the raids start, they can go underground. The thing to remember here is that the city was prepared for this to happen, but the understanding that it would take place really hadn't set in until the past 48 hours. We heard President Zelensky, even when we spoke with him just about a week and a half ago, basically saying he disagreed with the U.S. intel about the possibility of a full-scale invasion. He was trying to keep the people here calm. But tonight, it was very clear when he addressed the nation that this was imminent and that he understood it was imminent. He switched from Ukrainian to Russian and pleaded with the Russian people to put pressure on their leader, Vladimir Putin, to call off this invasion. Obviously, they were unsuccessful as the Ukrainian capital and the rest of the country is under attack as we speak.
All right, Trey Yingst, new tonight, now morning there, that those air sirens are underway. We will check back with you, Trey. Thank you very much. And we're going to go to Kevin Corke because we are getting a lot of reaction here in Washington, Democrats, Republicans alike.
I'm going to pop over for a moment.
And one of the reasons they might do that is because they might be intending to fly aerial, manned aerial aircraft, regular aircraft, to sort of more, pinpoint target particular buildings, particular assets, air assets, or whatever other military command and control assets they want to in this city and also elsewhere as well. Look, I mean, I don't know why those air raids sirens have been blaring out for the past couple of minutes. It was a surprise. It was a shock to us, as I expect it was a shock to most other residents of this city. It may have just been a practice in case there are air raids in the future. But I mean, given what we're currently witnessing, I mean, we can't rule out the possibility that that the Russian, that the Ukrainian authorities are warning the people right now about possible more air raids in the minutes or in the hours to come.
I think the possibility you just said, you just read my mind. The possibility they want people to.
All right, that is a little odd. I'm going to pull back on this for a moment. Let me see what we have here. So, the President Zelensky of Ukraine has declared martial law in the country because of the Russian attack. Speaking in a televised address to the nation shortly before 7 a.m., he did not clarify what restrictions would be in place. We're going to go ahead and try to get a map here to let's see if I can get a map up to track where this incursion is currently taking place. Here we go. So here's a present map that we have. And so we can see here, this is the eastern frontier, the separatist region. We do have in the south discussions of military amphibious units and Russian Marines landing to potentially overtake Odessa. This follows air artillery, especially at airports, and reports of gunfire at airports. We have known for weeks now that Russian troops have built up along the northern border, Belarus, and moved closer and closer to border, or to the border here, to take control of the capital. There was a suggestion earlier today that potentially Kyiv should join NATO, just the capital itself, which I think is quite literally the opposite of what Russia is hoping for. So let's see here. What else do we have here? So besides besides those from Kyiv in the north, reports of military engagement extended to Odessa in the south, where Russian troops were landing by sea. Russian state media as a moment of liberation. As Russia describes this as a special military operation. Ukrainian airspace has been closed to commercial flights due to potential hazards for military aviation. 20 minutes ago, Biden has spoken with the president of Ukraine. I'm not quite sure what Biden is going to do. We do have, it looks like, some footage here of an explosion in Kiev. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, here it is. You can see that here in the distance. It's a live cam here. Okay. The next wave of U.S. sanctions are expected to be announced by President Biden tomorrow morning, which unfortunately could still be 12 hours away. And that's not good. Yeah, 1 hour ago, we've been reporting that the invasion has begun. Let's jump on over for a moment to CNN. We'll hop over to Fox and such.
All of this, and yet who will ultimately be the ones to bear the brunt of, as what Matthew called it, this multi-pronged major attack by one of the world's most sophisticated militaries.
Germany's Olaf Scholz has now declared this a blatant breach of international law, and it does look like the White House has issued a readout I'm going to try to get this of the call.
Because people are heeding that directive to stay at home. Schools are closed today, according to the mayor's post. Also, people are being told not to go to work. They have been told that public transport is working, though. They've also opened this public bomb shelter that, I think probably everyone here wishes they would never have to use. There's no sign that.
All right, I'm going to read this out really quick. I know they're talking about the bomb shelter here on CNN. President Zelensky reached out to me tonight, and we just finished speaking. I condemned this unprovoked and unjustified attack by Russian military forces. I briefed him on the steps we are taking to rally international condemnation, including tonight at the United Nations Security Council. He asked me to call on the leaders of the world to speak out clearly against President Putin's flagrant aggression and to stand with the people of Ukraine. Tomorrow, I will be meeting with the leaders of the G7 and the United States, and our allies and partners will begin imposing severe sanctions on Russia. We will continue to provide support and assistance to Ukraine and the Ukrainian people. That is a statement from Biden's readout here. Ukraine now says that Russia is intensively shelling Ukrainian troops in the east. Ukraine has now stated that Russia is shelling airports and military sites. I'm going to look for video of that. In the meantime, we do have this here, which I believe this was this is the Russian embassy burning files in a courtyard. Doesn't appear to be audio of this. Okay, so we talked about Biden. Let's see what else we can find regarding Odessa here. If we just do a quick little search here, I would like to know where these. Okay, this is how do they look at this? The forces of it's almost like the Russians are on TikTok or Twitter here. This is just a search phrase here for Odessa. I do feel like I'm just getting spammed, unfortunately, though, with nonsense here. So let's just go to videos and see what we can get for top vids. So what do we have here? Oh, yeah, look at this. Documents being destroyed at the Russian consulate. Yeah, that's what's happening here. They're throwing documents on the floor. You can see the barbed wire up top, sort of an armed compound here. Wow. Reminds me of, oh gosh, what was the movie? I can't think of the movie right now. It's been in many movies, but anyway. Okay, let's see what else we have. Let's pop on over here. We'll pop on over to Fox. We saw the statement from Biden. Let's go ahead and get the statement here, or let's see what Fox is talking about.
There are very real implications of where we go from here, of where Europe goes from here. You heard the member of parliament that we had on from Ukraine, who said he doesn't think Putin is going to stop at Ukraine's borders, even if it is successful within Ukraine.
And that
United Nations chief has now urged Putin to, quote, give peace a chance. And there's a report now that a CNN reporter in Kyiv paused during his live report to put on a flak jacket after hearing explosions. That makes for good TV. I don't know if he meant to do that.
Don't know the numbers, are gathering in front of the Russian embassy in D.C.
I was thinking, was it Argo or Jason Bourne? I can't remember which one. It was one of those. Jason Bourne sounds pretty accurate.
Are folks that a big amount of the Ukrainian community in the U.S. gathering in front of the Russian embassy from different states now coming to Washington, D.C. We'll see how that develops. And lastly, the foreign minister from Ukraine, and again, I keep referencing that he was on set that special report, but it was interesting to talk to him because in the commercial break, he said this is a really tense moment. Obviously for him as foreign minister, but for their country. And he was leaving to go to New York to the UN Security Council and then back to Kyiv. But he just puts out the world must act immediately. Future of Europe and the world is at stake. To-do list: 1, devastating sanctions on Russia now, including SWIFT. 2, fully isolate Russia by all means in all formats. 3, weapons, equipment for Ukraine. 4, financial assistance. 5, humanitarian assistance. This is Foreign Minister Dmitry Kuleba of Ukraine, just putting that out.
This is what Ukraine is calling for. Whether or not they get that is the question. So far, it doesn't seem like they are.
That was one of the things he mentioned. He said to all of my Ukrainians in the U.S., we need you to do this. We need you to show up. We need you to contact your lawmakers, make your voices heard. And so them gathering here at the Russian embassy in D.C., I might have to swing by there on my way home in the middle of the night, see exactly what's going on there. But that's something he's called for, those who have a voice, who are free, who can try to influence policy here and around the world, to stand up for those who are still in their homeland there in Ukraine. We want to go back to Trey Yanks. He's been covering minute by minute the developments in Kyiv. He's there on the ground as the air raid sirens, I understand, Trey, continue.
That's exactly right. Over the past 5 minutes, we've heard the air raid sirens go off again in the Ukrainian capital of Kyiv. Off in the distance, a small explosion. But this gives you a sense of how this is continuing at this hour. We do know Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has declared martial law across all of Ukraine. The mayor of Kyiv is asking residents to stay indoors at this hour. Just over the past hour, though, there's a big police station behind us, and we saw the parking lot fill up with cars, and police officers get out, and they're currently standing outside of the building. So martial law is in effect right now in Ukraine as the country braces for more Russian attacks. It's not just the capital, though. Other cities, as we've talked about, Kharkiv, Odessa, Mariupol, the list really goes on in terms of the different locations that are being targeted by the Russian military. This was the campaign, the worst case scenario that was talked about here in Ukraine, taking place right now.
Yeah, it's also worth noting that now Russian ruble has fallen to levels in value relative to the U.S. dollar that we have not seen really in I mean I'm going back to 1994 here on the chart, and I can't see the Russian ruble to the dollar spot being this low. I'll share a screenshot here, but this is just what the chart looks like, and the higher it goes, it means you need more of that currency to buy US dollars, right? So higher would actually be lower. Higher would imply a weaker currency, and it is getting drastically weak here. It's no surprise that the Russian government has shut down the stock exchanges in Moscow and throughout Russia. 10-2 Treasury yield spread now at 36.4, something that is frequently seen as potentially a precursor to a recession. Though questions are how long this potentially could last. And its longer term effects potentially on inflation. Now, air raid sirens, as of 1 minute ago, have been ringing again in the center of Kyiv, the capital of Ukraine. Donald Trump has now responded and blasted Joe Biden, suggesting that Joe Biden is, quote, asleep on the job over Putin's military invasion of Ukraine, and says the Russian leadership saw, quote, weakness in the United States. Donald Trump now officially coming out to slam Joe Biden for this Russian attack. Boris Johnson says that Putin has chosen the path of bloodshed, and that the United Kingdom will respond. Now, earlier today, we did have Boris Johnson slammed for pea shooter style sanctions against Russia. Johnson has just gotten off the phone, by the way, with Zelensky. This follows a call from Biden. Keep in mind, if you want to post updates, if you don't mind, please go to metkevin.com/chat and then look for Ukraine. There is a chat section there. It's free for you to go to metkevin.com/chat and throw some links for me. Let's take a look at this here for a moment. What do we got here?
No, I think that's exactly right. I mean,
Hold on a sec. Wrong one here. Not this one? You could see these shellings here and explosions in the back. See, oh wow, there you go. Got a patient. Watch here. Oh, it cut. There you go. Okay, so this is near Kyiv, Ukraine. Let's go ahead and get this up on the map. See if this is close to eastern or northern border here. I'm just gonna close that here. Let's kill the audio. There we go. So that's here. That's also along the border. So obviously we have attacks here in Donetsk. Here now, seeing shellings here in Kharkiv and in Kyiv. Not good. So this is really showing us that we're getting attacks here at Odessa, Kiev, here, really from all sides right now. All sides. Let's pop on over for a moment to Fox.
Brett, how concerned are you about that possibility that this slips beyond borders, whether intentionally or accidentally, and triggers an Article 5 obligation for NATO members?
Yeah, so just so you know, Article 5 would be an attack on one is attack on all for NATO members. This would be a worst case scenario, World War III style scenario, which is not good. Not good at all. Let's listen in.
Aggressive action now, not only with economic sanctions. I disagree with my co-panelist because I believe there are ways to send a very clear message to Putin, especially on the home front where he is weakest.
Quick note, I just got a message from someone here, and I have not verified this, but they say that Russian flights have been halted until March 2nd, which does imply a potential full week of these styles of incursions here. Now, looking here in our Discord, and shout out to those of you posting these here in Discord. Let's take a quick peek at some of these posts. Stand by. Look at that shelling in the distance. That's terrible. Ay, ay, ay. I mean, every one of those flashes is an explosion. That's a lot. Let's take a look at another one here. Oops. So it's difficult to tell what this one is. This looks like a surface-to-air missile here. It looks like that was potentially intercepted. I mean, I don't know, but that looks like it was either it targeted a plane or it was intercepted. But yeah, usually, I mean, you see this at like the Iron Dome in Israel. These surface-to-air missiles, they end up getting it. But then you would have potentially seen another missile here. So it's quite unclear what this ended up targeting. Okay, let's pop by. Over.
The worst thing for our interest, and we need to contain this and not escalate it to where we can get drawn into a war.
Those are Grad rockets. Look up Grad launcher on YouTube. Okay, we'll pull that up. Let's do it. Grad launcher. Aha. Take a look at this.
From where the anti-government fighters are preparing this Grad missile launcher, they're acting on intelligence that there's a buildup of Ukrainian army troops, armored personnel vehicles, and tanks not far from here. They're going to fire, and then we need to get out of here as soon as possible because there's the fear that there'll be missiles coming in.
Is this too loud, by the way?
When they start firing, are you going to come across to me? Where's safe to stand? God knows where.
So apparently,
you know, we safe.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm playing the wrong footage here. A little too loud. Okay, there we go. Sorry, I had the wrong footage up. My bad. So these are the Grad missiles. Apparently, this is from Russia Today video here in Ukraine. They haven't shown anything yet. Here we go.
Yuri, I don't want to die. So where should I stand?
So they haven't really shown a launch here yet. I wonder if they will now. Yeah. Yeah. I hope I didn't blow you up there with the audio. Let me know if that. This is probably coming through a little hot, but anyway, ouch. I'll lower that. Yeah. Wow. Okay. So, all right. Let's hop on over to Fox for a moment here. Sorry about the volume. Holy, that was loud. Sorry, I got to deal with that. My bad.
Just the Ukrainian Interior Ministry is out with an early statement here saying that the state border of Ukraine was attacked by Russian troops. Again, this is Ukraine's Interior Ministry, saying the state border of Ukraine was attacked by Russian troops from Russia and Belarus at about 5 a.m. their time. Attacks on border units, border patrols, and checkpoints are carried out with the use of artillery, heavy equipment, and small arms. Border guards and armed forces of Ukraine and National Guard of Ukraine are firing at the enemy. Casualties unknown, but they're saying dozens of casualties is the estimate so far with fighting along the border. And again, this is the border with Belarus. We've talked about how there could be this move from that side to try to get to the capital quickly on the ground. It appears that there is significant fighting, according to the Ukraine Interior Minister, along that border in the early morning hours. And obviously the airstrikes that we're seeing with our guys on the ground and the air sirens that are still going in Kyiv.
Yeah, and there had been concern in recent weeks about military exercises, about not only, one border that appears.
Just a quick note, we now have BTC dropping lower now to about 34.646. Futures actually holding steady, unlike BTC. We'll pull up futures here above my head here for a moment. We've got Dow Jones down 204, S&P 500 down 1.98 right now. NASDAQ Tech down about 2.3. 39. Shout out as well to FTX for being a sponsor for crypto trading. If you want to trade using TradingView and maximize your TA skill, check out TradingView, and you could use the code down below to get up to $10 in free crypto. This is the 1 minute chart now here on TradingView for BTC. We could see this substantial drop here right around 6 to 7 p.m. California time. And as time has progressed here, we continue to trend down and hit new lows. Although we're kind of sitting around the same level that we were about 1 hour ago. Still bobbing around though. Let's go ahead and see what. Oh, here's Zelensky. Let's take a listen to him.
In the Donbass, Russia has carried out strikes on our military infrastructure and our border guards. Explosions were heard in many cities of Ukraine. We imposed martial law throughout Ukraine.
So, Brett, this is important because there was a lot made about top Afghan leaders fleeing when it looked like that country was falling apart. Zelensky, there was some criticism of him. He shouldn't go to Munich and be part of the security conference, but it looks like he's very much committed. His impassioned speech earlier tonight, this video, I'm here with you, the Ukrainian people are going to fight. It looks like he's staying put and says, he keeps encouraging them, saying, we're ultimately going to win this. We are proud people and we're not going anywhere.
There was talk that there were some officials in our government that wanted to get Zelensky out to Poland or elsewhere. Remember, we moved our U.S. embassy from Kyiv, and our State Department officials are now over the border. But the parliament is still there. The president is still there. The foreign minister just flew back there. The cabinet is still holding national security meetings in the capital city, and they say they're going to fight to the end.
And again, if you have not heard yet, Biden did speak with President Zelensky, as did Boris Johnson. And futures did just slip a little bit more as well, since I just last looked about 2 minutes ago. But Biden did promise severe sanctions coming tomorrow. Presently, probably in about 12 hours here, as President Biden did condemn Russia's actions in a phone call with the Ukrainian president. The Russian ruble now weakening further on these potential sanctions, now to $90 per USD. This is the lowest level that we have ever seen for the ruble in certainly at least the last 30 years that I could see a history of here. In the 90s, this is the certainly the lowest valuation we've seen for their currency, and continuing to monitor updates here. All right, let's keep listening in.
Preceded by cyber attacks, and that's really exactly what happened in Ukraine. The cyber
worth noting, if you take a look at the Ukrainian foreign ministry website, totally down. I can't even get to the website. Certain Ukrainian banks, similar issues. Thank you so much, Ryan. Appreciate that. Thank you for your vote on governor, and thanks for the $5. So a Ukrainian here in our Ukraine chat and Discord says that Russia launches strikes only by military airports, military bases, and arsenals. And then potentially strikes in Odessa that are air defense strikes. Which were trying to bring down some drones. Maybe that's what we saw a video of earlier. Just a few minutes ago, we saw a video of one of those surface-to-air missiles. I think somebody mentioned those are the Gant missile or something like that. Anyway, potentially striking drones. It does sound like right now that most of the attacks are near the border, Sumy, Kyiv, and other areas here. It does look like the spectator index on Twitter, though, it reported about 3 minutes ago, troops have crossed into Ukraine from the Belarusian border. This is just 3 minutes ago. That would not be good. Troops moving in would solidify the invasion belief. 8 minutes ago, Ukrainian military says Air Force of the Armed Forces of Ukraine are repelling an air attack by Russia. And that their Ukraine defense minister is stating that the enemy has begun intense shelling of our units in the east. It is possible that's the video that we saw on Twitter earlier, where we saw those consistent flashes coming up on screen of potentially an attack. Yeah, Russia temporarily suspends flights to a number of airports until the early hours of March 2nd. And we've heard air raid sirens now move multiple times. Hong Kong Stock Exchange index moving down 5%. All right, let's flip on over here. See what else we can learn.
In order to try to at least limit what's happening. I think at least psychologically, there was, I think in the West, we have this tendency to be always optimistic and always thinking, I mean, you hear it from our politicians. We're not closing the door on diplomacy. Despite the fact that Vladimir Putin it's really not speeches he's making. He's ranting about how Ukraine shouldn't even exist. And yet, in spite of that,
okay, we'll just have an update now. Senior Ukrainian official, we believe hundreds of Ukrainian soldiers have died in Russian airstrikes. That's terrible. That is terrible. Though I do believe that we saw that substantial shelling on Twitter, and it would not shock me to believe that there have been multiple casualties as a result of this style of shelling that could likely lead to hundreds of deaths easily. Let me see if I can re-find that. Yeah, here we go. That would have been this video clip here. I'm going to hop on over to this. Unfortunately. That's a little, you have to kind of look here on the horizon You can see this shelling here. Unfortunately. Yeah, let's hop back on over here for a moment.
Making sense even earlier in the week, giving justification for an invasion by using a history that does not exist of Russia and the Soviet Union. Yeah. Again, Don, I think this is sort of one of the problems that we have here in the West, is looking through a Western lens and trying to make sense out of what Vladimir Putin says.
It doesn't make sense.
It doesn't. It does to him, though. And it does, in some sense, to the Russians that he's speaking to. I think the largest target for that ranting speech that he gave the other night was the Russian people.
Here's what looks like an attack on an airport. We're going to take a peek at here briefly on Twitter. And let's see if we can get that up. It's just a brief little 4-second shot here of what looks like fire at an airport in Ukraine. Particularly here, it says the Kyiv airport within Ukraine.
Talks about how Kyiv is run by Nazis. He's talking about the government. He's not just talking about the Donbass. He's not just talking about trying to help these make-believe countries that he helped create in Donetsk and Luhansk. What he's talking about when he talks about Nazis is he's talking about Kyiv, and that could foretell a sort of decapitation type of operation where you get a lot of military stuff going on, and then he sends folks in to basically take care of the government.
Quickly, because I need to get to other stuff, but I want to ask you, as you were listening to the sirens, the airstrike sirens going off in Kyiv, I heard you, I saw you sit up and take notice, and wow. What were you thinking when you heard that?
There's a note here now that potentially the Ukrainian Air Force has potentially successfully shot down a Russian aircraft, which is obviously going to be provocative for Russia.
Sometimes the only thing that's left.
Okay, Russian troops are now shelling from Belarus. And an Air India aircraft to Ukraine has now U-turned. Yeah.
Hit that button and hope for the best. Yeah.
Ukrainian Defense Ministry does deny the potential of Russian troops landing in Odessa from the sea. So this is still disputed. We still don't have guaranteed information here that troops are actually on the ground. Right now, it just appears that we do have the initial strikes. We've now had multiple reports of shellings on the eastern front of both airports and military installations. It does look like the Ukrainian border guard is reporting that they are being attacked from 5 regions along the border. And this includes a shelling from Belarus to the north. And so it does appear like there are potentially airstrikes coming from both or potentially all the north, the east, and the south. And the targets right now appear to be airports and military facilities. This is in line with Putin's goal of, quote, demilitarizing Ukraine. Let's take a listen in here.
Who is running the show on these things like the UN Security Council, you know, the Human Rights Council they've got there. I mean, sometimes we look at the membership of some of these bodies there at the UN and they raise eyebrows and a lot of questions. And tonight's going to be one of those nights. So this is coming in from the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine on Facebook. This is a post attributed to them. They talk about what's happening, the shelling that's been coming in. They say the Air Force of the Armed Forces of Ukraine is fighting off the air attack of the tanker. They say the defense forces of the state are in full combat readiness, occupied and maintain defensive positions. The situation is under control. Then add this, they say the information...
Okay, there is now talk that potentially an ammunition depot in Kyiv is now on fire. This is TBD. But this is now being reported that an ammunition depot is on fire, which is not a surprise given that Russia does have a goal of attacking. This, by the way, is what the capital looks like right now for traffic purposes. This is traffic leaving the capital. Back to Fox here briefly.
Eyes in every place. So we have to be careful about how we report it, the caveats that we put on it. But clearly there is an invasion ongoing.
Yeah. And as you've, had on Special Report, we aired the reporting as well. There were warned days in advance. There will be deepfakes that are very convincing, whether it's trying to make it look like a certain leader has said something.
Here's just some footage of the air raid sirens. It's quite eerie. Wow. Yeah, Jolly, if you can, post that in Discord, metkevin.com/chat. And then Ukraine. Here's a feed, by the way, of present sites of reported attacks. You could see these happening actually quite well into Ukraine here. Here's the Donetsk region. Here's Kharkiv, which we've seen attacks in. Sumy, Kiev, the northern side where we're hearing that there is shelling being launched from Belarus, which is right here. Yeah, almost 3 million people in Kiev. This is true. Very difficult to evacuate. That's terrible. Yeah, so we'll see what happens with Joe Biden tomorrow and Russian sanctions. Let's see if we can get any updates here from no. Yeah, this is the same update that I saw here. Russian media reports of an amphibious strikes on Odessa are not thought to be accurate at present. A lot of misinformation, very, very common. Let's see what First Squawk has here for us. This was the ammunition depot, so TBD for more.
The details of that call were released a little while ago. President Biden says that he reiterated that the U.S.
Wheat futures now continue to rally. Remember, a lot of wheat exports do come from Russia and Ukraine. Ukraine's top diplomat is urging the world to, quote, stop Putin. The Chinese embassy in Ukraine urges Chinese citizens to, quote, stay safe. Okay. That's an interesting direction.
Allies and counterparts, but it is going to speak to the American people. Any timing on that address to the nation?
Yes, we expect that to be right around noon. The virtual call with the G7 leaders is scheduled to be like something around 9 to 11 in the morning, and then at about noon is when they want the president to come out. But obviously, things are so fluid, and on a normal day, this president does tend to have things stack up and things slide a little bit or get.
Here's potentially some footage of tanks moving into Ukraine. Let's take a look here. You can see that here on the right.
The fastest way for an invasion force to get to the Ukrainian capital, Kyiv, is exactly from Belarus. There's a pretty new.
This is Zenkivka. So let's take a look at this. Zenkivka. Let's take a look if we can find out specifically where this is. Ukraine. I mean, this appears to be right on the border. Yeah, this is right on the border here. So this would be, if these are indeed Russian tanks, this would be the first move of Russian military here, at least that we can see here, pushing troops into Ukraine. Look at the traffic on Apple Maps. I imagine we could probably also look at that on Google Maps. If you're thinking Kyiv. Let's see. Although I don't know if it actually live updates. No, it doesn't seem to be doing so. Maybe I would have to look at Apple. Anyway, let's hop back on over here for a moment.
Because Shannon, if you want to bring a nation to its knees, you go after power, you go after water, and then you go after food. They're also going after banking, which causes panic and chaos. People are trying to leave the city. They can't get access to money. So this is part of not only the psychological.
Here, by the way, is apparently a live stream, a link of what's being seen in Kyiv right now.
The fastest way for an invasion force to get to the Ukraine.
Audio's on, and I don't hear anything.
Exactly from Belarus. There's a pretty new way actually.
But so we do have then a live shot here of Maiden Square, Kyiv. Okay. Pay attention to that.
One thing we can understand for sure right now is Vladimir Putin can't be trusted on anything he says. Whether the DHS Secretary Marcus says there's no credible threat, you have to operate right now because of a war footing that everybody is on, that there is a threat, that something is going on. Russia has demonstrated through its proxies that they have the ability.
Chinese embassy now referring to explosions happening in some cities, and Ukraine now saying that the target is clearly our military infrastructure.
We have intelligence collection centers in Australia, Pine Gap. Those are very critical to us. So it doesn't have to be an attack on the American homeland, but it can be attack on American assets and capabilities around the world. But look, here's the one thing. You have to act as though you're about to be attacked right now with what's going on. You cannot take a breath and say, hey, we'll get to this tomorrow. No, right now, you need to be doing everything you possibly can do. You need to have everybody spun up, briefed, ready to go. Because what Vladimir Putin chooses to do will be at a time and place of his choosing. And as we're seeing right now, he's doing everything he wants right now without being stopped. Cyber is the one area where we can actually have an impact on his ability to get away with it.
So Politico's nightly email that came out late Wednesday has a quote from the Senate Intelligence Chairman.
Here's a video shot of a photojournalist apparently seeing missiles fly by overhead. Let's take a look at this one.
Fuck, it's crazy. I can't believe that Russia has declared war on Ukraine. That as soon as the declaration, oh fuck, that's a missile. That's a missile. That's a fucking missile. Holy shit. All right, we've got to fucking get inside. I can't fucking believe that.
Wow. Wow, that was intense. That is intense. Take a look, just see if you could see it here. There it is. Wow. 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 That is intense. Very, very, very intense. Yikes. Let's hop on over here for a moment. And let's see what we got. Right now, we've got futures on the NASDAQ down about 1.59 and S&P 500 down about 2.16. Dow Jones down about 2.2. Let's pop on over here.
Well, in a scale of which I think anybody who's been observing this conflict thought was utterly unimaginable. And then these comments from Russian President Vladimir Putin essentially threatening consequences that nobody's seen in history before. Utterly chilling and a different day.
Quick note, if you want to see yourself any of the tweets that I show up, I'm going to be liking them. Not because I like them, but solely because if you go on Twitter and then you type in Real Meet Kevin, you could go to the little likes tab and you could see them yourself if that's helpful to you. Chinese embassy in Ukraine now saying that the situation in Ukraine has deteriorated sharply. Security risks up. Ukrainian military says the Ukrainian air defense has shot down a Russian plane in eastern Ukraine. I saw that a little bit earlier too. Let's keep listening in here.
We know that. We don't know what's happened in Donbass. Coming in from the north is the most direct way to get into Kyiv. You saw on the video battalion tactical group moving right down the road, unless the roads are blocked by Ukrainian forces. They'll be in Kyiv in a few hours, and then we'll see what happens. I assume that the Ukrainians have defenses out there. It's going to be hard for CNN to capture the sites of that. Hopefully, we'll get social media of it or something. But they've got to stop.
There are now. Oh, this is the video that we just showed. That's interesting about those tanks rolling by. But they're apparently now air defense missiles alive in the western front of Ukraine. This is right here, city. I believe you pronounce this Liv, but I'm probably entirely wrong about that. So it's Lviv. And let's take a peek here if we can see this air raid siren here that is apparently in the city. Stand by. Let's pause these. Hold on. There we go. All right, let's listen in. Yeah. Yeah. Lviv. Lviv? Oh, yeah, I would have never gotten that from that spelling, but I appreciate that, L. Apparently Lviv is Lviv. So thank you. All right. Will this make the Federal Reserve U-turn? Yeah, that's the big question. It depends. It depends on how long this lasts and what this does to economic demand. If aggregate demand goes down, it will limit the fears of a potential wage price spiral. And inflation out of control. Okay, the Interior Ministry does say that, quote, attacks on residential buildings and civilian infrastructure are not presently expected. Not presently expected. Very good. No, we're not going to look at forensic files. Sorry, we're going to go the other way. That way. Let's see what we got here on Fox.
Yes, we wait for President Biden to speak on Thursday after speaking with his G7 allies and to the American people about just how far they're going to go. And they talk about having a number of tools in this bag that they can use against Russia. But the world tonight across the
Okay, so Boris Johnson, Biden, and Schultz in Germany have now spoken with Zelensky. Expect to further strengthen the eastern flank.
Sheet of music saying we're committed to standing with Ukraine. Senator Marco Rubio, who speaks a lot about this, has been speaking about Russia's actions. Just
in case you have not heard yet, Moscow Stock Exchange has stopped trading, and Russia is specifically Moscow is banning flights in certain areas until March 2nd. Poland is now seeking far-reaching European Union sanctions.
In the eastern part of the country, again, these are all things that we want to confirm with our own people, but that's coming out from the Ukrainian defense ministry. And I think as you continue on into the hours here, you're going to be getting a lot of reports from a lot of different parts of the country about what has transpired.
And I do think at this moment there's a sense that it seems more broad than many expected Putin would go in this first wave.
Yeah. Question here about whether or not mortgage rates could potentially fall. It's actually possible that the answer to that is yes. In the short term, they could, as the treasuries become a safe haven asset. The more you see the U.S. 10-year treasury rotate down, the more that is possible. Let's go ahead and listen.
Those who would be tempted to intervene, Russia will respond immediately, and you will have consequences that you never have had before in your history. Putin is sounding exceptionally confident, and maybe a lot of that is bluster, just as he leads his troops and tells them to go in and get this thing done. But he clearly seems to think he's got a position of leverage.
Potential note here that Biden is expected to speak at noon tomorrow. So that's about 11 hours from now.
Weeks, but it's significant, and it's probably 60, 70, almost 80% of the Russian forces along on that border with Ukraine. It's going to be a test, though, for the inner city battles with Ukrainians who have been armed and are ready, they say, to defend their country. Putin has a vision. He has a vision for not only taking over the Soviet Union map, but also rejiggering the world order.
Yeah, no kidding. This is a tweet here from the foreign minister of Ukraine. Putin has just launched a full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Peaceful Ukrainian cities are under strike. This is a war of aggression. Ukraine will defend itself and will win. The world can and must stop Putin. Now is the time, or the time to act is now. Japanese defense stocks surge on Russia, as Russia launches attacks on Ukraine. Obviously, we've seen oil climb, and we'll come back to some more insights here.
Hopefully everybody's going to be safe.
Yeah, we count on them, and we are grateful to them. All right, that is it for Fox News at Night extended coverage. Trace Gallagher is going to pick up our continue.
That's all right. We'll pick up. Okay, France now reiterating their support for Ukraine. Let's take a look at how oil is moving at the moment. Oil now almost actually at $102 per barrel. We were last at about midway through 101. Now knocking on the door of 102. Got a note here from Kyle James. Ukraine military says 5 Russian planes and 1 Russian helicopter were shot down. Well, let's go and take a look at this region here. Let's see here. That would be Luhansk region. By Donetsk. This would be the Eastern Front. All right. Take a listen in here. Oh, look at that background.
In the hours ahead. But at this hour, there are reports Russian troops can be seen entering Ukraine from Russia and Belarus. Now, we have not independently verified that, but martial law has been declared as explosions rattle Kyiv and other cities around Ukraine. Russia says military bases are being targeted, not populated regions, but everything the Russians say is being taken with a grain of salt. They have been untruthful this entire time. Meantime, at the White House, President Biden is condemning Moscow for what he calls an unprovoked and unjustified attack. But it's unlikely.
Yeah, it does look like it was B&O News that provided this update here that Ukraine's military says 5 enemy planes and a helicopter shot down in the country's east. Reiterating this news that somebody else just posted.
Allies for refusing to ban Ukraine from joining NATO, and Putin is slamming the U.S. for having missile capabilities near Russia's border. It's an ever-escalating conflict that efforts of diplomacy and threats of sanctions by the international community have so far failed to resolve. So in the coming hours, we'll be keeping watch on the fast-developing events with our team of Fox News correspondents. We have Lucas Tomlinson and Trey Yings on the ground.
Somebody here mentioning that an airport, Ivano-Frankivsk military airport, is blasted, as well as airports near Kherson.
From Ukraine, let's go live to Steve Harrigan. He's on the ground in Kyiv. At daybreak, Steve, what are you seeing?
Hey, Trace, try and give you a sense of the mood here in Kyiv. Certainly a terrifying morning for the 3 million people who live here. I'm just watching cars right now pull out. A lot of people who live here didn't believe this would ever happen, didn't believe that ballistic missiles would be exploding in their city. That is what is happening.
I'm not going to put this video here on YouTube, but there is a video now circulating on Twitter. It is called Ukrainian Soldiers Eliminated as a Result of the Night Clash in LPR. You could go to my like history or just look up this particular username here, and you can see this graphic video of unfortunately what would appear to be potentially bodies of Ukrainian soldiers on the floor, which I'm not going to show here on YouTube.
Border guards as well. Border guards on the Belarus-Ukraine border. This is significant because a mass of Russian forces have been in Ukraine, more than 30,000 strong there, along with forces from Belarus. It's a straight shot down here to the capital.
At the moment, it does look like jumping on over to our sponsor for this video, FTX. It does look like a Bitcoin is moving up from about 34.3 as a low now. And this is a lower low than what we've seen of about 34.6, but now bouncing around 34.8.
Those tanks, those armored personnel carriers are coming this way. It's a cloudy morning. We've heard jets overhead, although the airspace is closed. We've heard helicopters helicopters too. So we're really just trying to figure out, in literally the fog of war here, what exactly is happening. People are fleeing, air raid sirens are going off, shells are hitting, Russian forces on the move. This is not just an invasion, a little incursion in eastern Ukraine. This is something bigger. This is a full-scale invasion. We've heard from President Zelensky. He said he's staying put and that Ukraine will fight. They've got an army. They've got an air force. They're a million strong. A lot of civilians are going to fight as well, too. Certainly outgunned, outspent by the Russians. In the short term, certainly the Russians do have the advantage. But I think the next...
it does look like that at the moment, Poland and Baltic regions are calling for NATO to potentially invoke Article 4. Article 4 is different from Article 5. Article 5 is an attack on one, is an attack on all. Article 4 actually has to do with calling the parties of NATO, the members of NATO, together to essentially consult on a potential attack or a threatening of territorial integrity. At the same time, Ukraine, obviously, at this point, has declared a state of emergency, recommends that citizens return home. Ukraine right now indicating they do believe that residential buildings are safe for the time being. However, certainty can't really be provided here.
Worst case scenario would be for armored vehicles to be inside a city and to be trapped and to be pinned down and then to have their supply lines attacked. I think they're going to try and move quickly and get the job done here in Kyiv. We've seen masses of Russian armor and personnel carriers entering eastern Ukraine, and now they're on the move from Belarus. I think that's the key point right now. Ukraine is being attacked from all sides, from the north, from the east, from the south. They've gotten a lot of aid from the West, a lot of weapons from the U.S., but this Ukrainian army is on its own. We haven't seen a tremendous amount of preparation. Really, a lot of people in denial. And now, this is a big one. This is not a minor incursion. This is Putin.
Here's another shot from the same Twitter account that showed the graphic images. These look like tracer rounds here. Oh my gosh. Watch here, mid. Oh, you can see what looks like a strike on the city right here. I'm going to try to pause on that strike. Yeah, there it was. I missed it. There it is. Yikes.
Years, which could also happen, as we've seen in Afghanistan and Iraq.
I think you're right, Trace, and that's why so many people really didn't believe this would happen in this way, because the risks are so enormous for Russia by launching a full-scale invasion on Ukraine in defiance of most of the rest of the world. The risks, even militarily, are huge, while the gains could be, in the short term, quick and successful for the Russians. In the long term, it's tough to see how it stands up. We got some hints at Putin's thinking over the last few days. We heard him in a rambling, unsettling, unhinged, hour-long address where he went through Russian history from Lenin all the way through to the present day, where he basically said Ukraine's not a country. It's not a real country, and we're going to teach them a lesson. One man can call the shots in Russia. One man controls the country, controls the nukes, controls the army. That man is bitter. He's angry. He's humiliated. He wants revenge. And everyone in his general staff.
There's some talk that a couple of or just that last Twitter account there was potentially propaganda by separatists. I can't confirm either way.
Great coverage as always, Steve. Thank you. Well, let's turn to our senior White House correspondent, Peter Doocy. He's live for us at the White House. And Peter, clearly the president is watching this very closely. You said that he had a conversation earlier with President Zelensky of Ukraine. What do we expect to happen at the White House in the hours to come?
Trace, things have quieted down a little bit here since the two big batches of activity, which we understand were a secure call where the president was briefed.
EU leaders to meet today on further restrictions, and Poland is looking for far-reaching sanctions, as well as we already know, the United States planning severe sanctions against Russia tomorrow.
From what a senior administration official told me, the president promised that later on today he will announce some new sanctions. We don't know exactly if they're going to go as far as sanctioning Putin. Something they have said is on the table, but they are going to stick with sanctions. Something that this White House is very insistent upon. There's no circumstance under which this president will come out tomorrow around noon, we believe, to say that U.S. troops are going to go to Ukraine to fight Russia. That just is not going to happen. The president is going to continue to try to work with European partners. He's going to talk to the G7 on a Zoom.
Now, there are rumors, and I want to clarify, they are just rumors, that the United States may have troops in Ukraine to help provide defense or strategic purposes, although this is just rumors. I haven't seen any confirmation of this. Because obviously Biden has said no troops in Ukraine, but then again, they could tell us one thing and do another.
Community that Putin wants to be recognized, he wants to be respected and have standing amongst amongst the other global powers. They think
Russian apparently defense ministry now says that Ukrainian air defenses have been, quote, neutralized.
He will stop doing something like this. But so far, this White House, the day started, or at least yesterday, with Jen Psaki saying they thought that first batch of sanctions had Putin improvising and adapting his approach. They said they still thought that there was going to be some sort of an invasion. But we have not heard, with all the talk about an imminent invasion, about everything, at least a warning, really, about everything that our teams on the ground are seeing, which would be some of these missile strikes that appear to be launched from the Russians all over the country. So things are changing quickly. Things have quieted down here at the White House, but a busy morning that starts with that G7 Zoom about less than 8 hours from right now. Trace.
You talked a lot, Peter, and you've been doing yeoman's work about these sanctions. Is it your sense and the words you're getting from the White House that they're not going to all come at once? They're not just going to throw the whole kit and caboodle at Putin. They are going to kind of implement these things in a fashion that suits the European.
In their tranches, in their darn little tranches, to try to deter Putin from taking more bad action. Here's a live cam of Kyiv, showing not too long ago some explosions here. Bouncing back to Fox here.
You basically have infinite possibilities. You can always go back and create new sanctions on somebody. You can make them more severe, more significant. And so there has been some reporting out there tonight that the rest of the sanctions are coming tomorrow. I'm told that's not an accurate description. We just don't know what's going to be in there, but a senior administration official told me.
More footage here coming up on screen from what appears to be two fires at the Kyiv airport. That could be seen from apparently this person's townhome. Back to Fox.
That he's got all the rest of the G7 leaders on board before he does anything. And he thinks that is a show of strength that Putin will respect.
Yeah, well, he may or may not be right. We will find out.
Remember, Putin has warned that whoever tries to essentially get in the way of Putin will essentially regret that. That if he says, quote, "If you try to get involved, we will respond the likes you've never seen before," says Putin.
For the third time, we have not seen any Russian fighter jets or bombers or supersonic bombers overhead. So this could be a test. Western Ukraine has largely been unscathed. There are some reports of some military airfields being targeted about 2 hours to the northeast of here, but so far all is calm here in Lviv, the cultural capital of Ukraine, located about 6 hours west of the capital city. I think it's important we talk about how we got here. Trace, this is a crisis that many people say is 30 years in the making, when the Soviet Union fell apart. It's very clear that Vladimir Putin wants to put it back together, put the Russian Empire back together. When the Soviet Union disintegrated, it was a very small ceremony that took place in the woods of Belarus in 1991 with the leaders of.
This, by the way, was what it looked like when Putin announced his incursion into the Donbas. Let's take a listen.
With accordance to the Article 51 in the 7th chapter of the UN Charter, with the sanction of the Federation Council, and according to the Friendship and Mutual Help treaties with Donetsk and Lugansk republics, I have decided to conduct a special military operation. The goal is to protect the people who for 8 years suffer bullying and genocide from the Kyiv regime.
Yeah, and this is obviously the Russian justification, not necessarily the what's actually happening. But let's keep listening.
And for this, we aim for the demilitarization and denazification of Ukraine. We'll bring to the court those who committed multiple sanguinary crimes against civilians, including Russian citizens. We do not plan to occupy Ukrainian territories.
Yeah, this is something that we saw as we began our reporting here, and as a result of this, we've seen a lot of coverage about attacks on military headquarters, airports, railways, communications. We've seen videos of attacks on the Eastern Front, Kyiv from the Northern Front, shellings from the Northern Front, Odessa, talks of attack, even potentially amphibious landings, though we're not certain about that. At the same time, we have a lot of air raid sirens in various different parts of Ukraine. Right now, we do have futures down substantially. We have NASDAQ futures down about 2.13, actually not as bad as they were. S&P futures down about 1.75, slightly recovered here, and about 1.79 on Dow. The Dow, again, also slightly recovered. Same thing with BTC. If we hop on over to Bitcoin, we are back to about 35,000 at the moment. Presently off of the lows, as potentially some of the further aggression has presently slowed, although the day has just begun in Ukraine.
On the border of many other NATO countries, and he'll have NATO on his doorstep, which is what he fears and has such issues with. Trace?
But look, as you go back to that speech that Vladimir Putin gave a couple of nights ago, and as you mentioned, he's saying
4 minutes ago, again in Lviv, air raid sirens again, warning of a potential attack in Lviv on the Western Front, which is the furthest from Russia.
Your brothers and sisters. And maybe they're saying these are surgical attacks. Surgical attacks, but it's very hard to walk back any kind of aggression like this in the days to come.
Well, we heard from Ukraine's foreign minister who called this a full-scale invasion, and the war.
Also, more talk about Russian-backed separatists, on the eastern front line of the country, apparently using any weapons at their disposal to fight.
Fighter jets or bombers, but clearly this is a country under attack. As Brett Baer said earlier, it's a very dark day for Europe, probably the darkest and most violent that we've seen since the end of World War II, Trace.
I just very want to quickly go where you are in Lviv, Lucas, because we saw the pictures of Kyiv. We have the traffic, people going to Poland, people fleeing. There's martial law there.
Hong Kong index now down about 3.1%, not as much as before. The Japanese Nikkei down about 2.1. South Korean Kospi Composite down about 2.7.
Right now, Trace, I'm seeing a number of cars on the street. I'm seeing life. I see a woman walking her dog right down there. A little traffic jam, people going to work.
This, by the way, where this reporter is on the Western Front.
The air raid sirens that
furthest away.
Russian air activity, no fighter jets or bombers, and we have not had any missile strikes here. But it is a bit surreal. Of course, in the march up to the invasion, we heard the reports out of the Pentagon. We spoke to officials. We heard the dire assessments out of the White House, of course, and Jake Sullivan, who actually expected this to be, this would start with short-range ballistic missiles and airstrikes. That certainly came true. But the people on the ground here were, they kind of shrugged their shoulders. In fact, they were like, well, we've been at war for 8 years. And gentleman I interviewed on the street, it said, well, I have guns in my safe. I'm like, yeah, but do you have short-range ballistic missiles in your safe? I mean, that's what the Russians are bringing to this fight. And sadly, we've seen that, the devastating consequences. But it is worth noting, the Russians.
By the way, worth noting that this video that we've seen on Twitter quite a few times now about the shelling occurring in Kyiv, which is Ukraine's second largest city, has now been verified by the New York Times as accurate. So this is indeed a shelling by Russian forces just about an hour ago.
Reporting, but I want to play President Zelensky. This is on social media talking about martial law, and then we'll talk on the other side.
This morning, Putin announced a special military operation in the Donbass. Russia has carried out strikes on our military infrastructure and our border guards. Explosions were heard in many cities of Ukraine. We imposed martial law throughout Ukraine.
It's a good indication, Lucas, that the president is going to stand and fight, that he's going to stay there. Nobody's leaving. Parliament is planning to stay there. There was a parliamentarian on earlier who said, listen, we are staying, we are fighting, we're going to gather, we're going to try and come up.
They're hodling.
But we're not going anywhere. Clearly, some people are heading to the Polish border, and they think as many as...
Okay, the Wall Street Journal is now reporting that, quote, potentially hundreds of Ukrainian service members have been believed to have been killed in these Russian attacks, likely amongst the Eastern Front, where the airports are unfortunately. This is clearly being defined as one of the potential worst-case scenarios here. Ukrainian parliament has now backed martial law imposed by the president of Ukraine. EU leaders now are discussing massive and severe sanctions on Russia in the strongest potential terms, and they are immediately calling on Russia to cease hostilities. Well, a lot of good, unfortunately, that is done. We are almost now at $102 per barrel on Brent, sitting at 10. We are just 6 cents away right now up about 5.27, 5.3 rather now percent on Brent, now only 3 cents away from $102 per barrel. 10-year Treasury down slightly. Pre-market futures here. Vacillating. Vacillating, probably the best way to describe them at this point. And BTC sitting at 34.8 right now.
With us now, retired Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis, who was deployed to Afghanistan twice. And Colonel, you go back to that warning that Vladimir Putin issued. He's clearly pointing that warning at the United States, saying, don't try it.
Yeah, without question, he is. And that's the reason why just a few days ago, he had a nuclear triad exercise where he did.
The trading of the Russian ruble has now been suspended as the currency has been diving. Numerous, I mean, hundreds, thousands of vehicles are leaving Russia or Ukrainian cities right now to escape the cities.
I don't think that he's after trying to rebuild the Soviet Union. I think
Still have reports of intensive shelling in the east of the country coming from across the border.
red line that he will fight to prevent. And he proved it in 2008 with Georgia. He proved it in 2014 with Crimea. And even as recently as last December, he was saying, you guys just aren't believing me. I am serious about this. This is a red line. And then when he started building up these forces, he was showing us we had every opportunity to just acknowledge reality, and we should have pulled NATO offer off the table for Ukraine. That could probably have been the one thing that might have prevented this war entirely. But instead, we want to hold with principles and stuff. And now that the people of Ukraine are paying for that, but now let me be very clear: nobody is responsible for the blood except for Vladimir Putin. Nobody. Right. But we could have mitigated this. We could have.
And Tulsi Gabbard kind of echoed that, Colonel, if you will. She was saying, maybe somebody should have listened at least.
Somebody in our Discord mentions they have family in Ukraine. Looks like outside of potential larger cities here, mentioning that everything is tentatively normal, just that schools are closed.
That close to their country. So, countries are very territorial and they don't want that. So nobody is letting Putin off the hook by any stretch here, Colonel. But what you're saying is that there might have been a pathway to resolve earlier in this diplomatic debate.
%. I've been saying for months on this network that very thing.
I'm gonna change channels here for a moment.
Now, Kyiv is so close that it's time for, and I hope President Zelensky, now he's declared martial law, get those barricades up, get the civil defense out there, be prepared to fight every street, every block in Kyiv. Because if you don't, once those Russian troops get in there, you won't be able to organize that defense. I'm hopeful that the Ukrainian forces will prevent the Russians from ever getting to Kyiv. But any sensible military planner would tell you that you might have to have defense in depth. And the final ring of that defense is the defense.
Here is, by the way, a brief video here that we have from Twitter. I will like this so that way you can look at my likes on Twitter. Just follow me at RealMeatKevin. You can check out my likes so you can see them yourself if you want to. Otherwise, I'll just play this now. This looks like a shelling here, and what you're going to see is right here in the street what looks like an artillery round exploding and shaking the power line. Stand by. Yikes. Popping back over.
Provide assistance to Ukraine to help them stay in the fight. They say they don't need any fighters, but they're certainly going to need support, and the West needs to give them that support. The nations of NATO, the United States, must do this. I hear Mr. Putin's statement, and I will tell you that in his previous exercises, Russia always anticipates a NATO involvement, and Russia plans to use some unconventional weapons, and including a nuclear weapon if necessary, to frighten off NATO. So this is a
we don't want to hear about nukes to frighten off NATO. Nuh-uh. Here's actually a little bit more from this journalist showing some of the damage of these shellings and the shells.
Standing.
Yep. All right, we're gonna pull off this. Hop back over here.
Well, I think the Ukrainians have an excellent defense capacity. They've got a large army, the largest army in Europe outside of Turkey. They're trained. Their officers are pretty good. What they haven't done is they haven't had the opportunity to practice command and control, as we would say, maneuvering forces over large areas. This could be difficult.
Lol. This guy's got to turn off his phone before he gets on here.
Instead, get behind the front line of the Ukraine soldiers and probably destroy their field army in the field, because you have a very supplicant
go.
Kyiv.
Yeah, Lieutenant.
Sorry about that. Not sure what happened there. It was probably Putin.
Well, Russia hit Ukraine with cyber attacks.
So we did get confirmation that NATO allies have agreed to hold an Article 4 consultation on Russia's invasion or incursion, and that Article 4 calls for the consultation over military matters when territorial integrity, political independence, or security of any of the parties is threatened. It does look like there's some form of agreement here. Biden is apparently in discussions with Congress to pass a new Russia sanctions bill. It looks like the United States House of Representatives are expecting to receive an all-member, unclassified briefing call from Biden administration officials here, probably to help encourage some form of a legislation write-up as soon as possible to properly sanction Russia. Presently, markets clearly reacting to the downside. Dow Jones still down about 2%. S&P down about 2% as well. 2.5% here on the NASDAQ, 2.15 on small cap. Volatility index over about 32 right now. At the same time of these sanctions, we're also seeing pain regarding cryptocurrencies. Bitcoin holding decently, thanks to our sponsor here, FTX, for the TradingView charts. Holding decently at around that 34.8 level. It's been bobbing around this 34.8, 35 level. Obviously, this is a substantial drop from where we had been. And if we hop on over to CoinMarketCap, we could just get a quick overview of some of our additional moves here. In the last 7 days, down 20% on BTC, 24% on Ethereum. Cardano, 27%. Solana down 19%. Look at this, folks. Cardano now only at 77 cents. Terra Luna down to 53. Dogecoin at 11. SHIB at 21.85. Polygon, $1.28. Algo, 71. Decentraland, 227. Sandbox, 270. Axie Infinity, it's used to trade for 130. 130, 140, now down at 43. This all, of course, in response to Putin's declaration of military operation into Ukraine. We've seen shelling from the north, from the east, air raid sirens throughout Ukraine in various larger cities. We do have the Russian ruble plummeting in value. The Russian stock market has been halted, and trading of the ruble, the currency, has also now been halted. We have martial law in Ukraine, and Biden expected to speak at 12 noon Eastern time tomorrow, though not yet. Let's keep listening in here.
Exactly to Vladimir Putin and that attack these days?
You know, there is through a variety of things. Look, once they find a set of tools that work, they don't want to invent a whole new set of tools each time. Once you find it, you do it. So we're able to track them based on tradecraft, based on the type of software they use. And but now, because of the invasion of Ukraine, it's very clear none of this is happening except without the express approval of Vladimir Putin. He is directing his intelligence.
Now, remember, I will be liking any tweets that I bring up here. So in case you're wondering or would like to see the footage for yourself for anything that I showcase here, I will like it so that way you could see it on the history of, if you go to @RealMeatKevin on Twitter, take a look at this one here. This appears to be a missile landing or hitting a particular airport in Ukraine. Take a look here. Let's see if we can listen to. Yeah. Now remember that earlier, Donald Trump also came out and condemned Joe Biden for his actions in potentially being asleep in response to the crisis in Ukraine. This again, that missile attack here. Residents presently fleeing the capital as well, as we've seen. Let's pop back on over here. Although this live cam feed seems relatively peaceful.
Knows what they have. So is there a way for them to find just the one computer that's not protected and get in? Probably, but at the same time, again, this is one of those things. They do that to us, we can visit it back to them orders of magnitude more. Why? Because we're not involved in a kinetic war right now. We can bring all of our forces to bear into cyberspace and unleash everything.
Yeah, I wonder if you can answer this question, because a lot of people talk about these sanctions. In fact, they are pivotal, and the president will kind of go over a list of brand new sanctions that he will impose upon Vladimir Putin in the coming days, and the EU will follow suit, and there will be a flood of sanctions on Russia. But you look at North Korea, there's a flood of sanctions on them, still operating, right? Right? You have, young Kim still in power. You look at Iran, still operating. They still have allies helping them. And a lot of people will point to the reasons.
Still have Brent oil just slightly below 102, WTI at about 96.6, both of about 5%.
of these sanctions by manipulating the system in the cyber world. Is that a fair assessment, or is that something that you don't think is actually achievable today?
Well, I don't think the sanctions are going to work. Exactly to your point. Look, we have sanctioned the heck out of Iran, and they're still building nuclear weapons. We sanctioned North Korea. Putin, these will just bounce off them. Sanctions won't do anything to stop what's going on right now. It's just punishment for behavior that's occurring now. But what will it do to deter him in the future? I just don't see that these sanctions will have a material effect, because the other thing too is Russia has been increasing their cooperation with China. We might cut them off of the SWIFT system.
Economic sanctions. I mean, did he just say we're going to start with the congressman first because he's the only man on the panel? I feel like that was disconnected from what he meant, because I think he said we're going to start with congressman, and then kind of reiterated the person's name, and it's kind of like, because he's the only guy. But it kind of came across as like, well, we're going to start with the man because he's the only man here. It didn't sound good. I think it was the former that I described, but what I heard did not sound good. Anyway, so Brent here at 103. Still holding on to that 103, and Dow, S&P, or NASDAQ really vacillating around that negative 3% range here. Looking at gold up now about $1.66%. That's been relatively stable. And your Treasury pretty stable here as well. All right, let's hop on and let's see what commentary we get here.
Question is, will Biden help Ukraine fight off Russia? What Putin wants to do is to make this as smooth as possible. So the first 12 to 24 hours, very critical, as he'll go after command and control targets. There's still a lot the U.S. and NATO can do to help Ukraine, providing military intelligence, location of Russian forces, even some air power and surveillance. They have got to decide if they're going to help Ukraine fight, and it is going to be ugly to watch.
It is going to be ugly to watch, and I'm wondering, Rebecca Heinrich, is that really the answer? You're going to have to do more. You have to watch Ukraine fight this battle, and that is going to be heartrending for people around the world, because this could go on for a long time, and it is clearly, at least from the outside looking in, a mismatch.
Yes, there's three things that we really need to do. The first is this idea that we're.
By the way, continued reiteration here that the Russian armed forces are not to strike citizens.
You give full bore sanctions. Watch the ruble go through the floor, really lay on the pain. And then you can offer to take the pain off once Putin decides to lay off or to have more restricted aims. And then you're going to see, hopefully, the Russian people come out in the streets because they're going to feel the pain. That needs to be the strategy now. So they need to flip it. The other thing, we need to have, we need a Russian military support to the bolts in the polls. That's going to inspire and give greater confidence to the Ukrainians. And it's also
numerous updates now from the Ukrainian government that banks are operating. Seems like there's a lot of potential panic, maybe even fears of a bank run forming. I don't expect it would get to this sort of level, but we're seeing this a lot. And also talk about there being no restrictions on foreign exchange transactions in Ukraine right now.
Back off. We don't want nuclear employment. We don't want it at all. And so we need to be shoring up deterrence because this is a very serious situation. In the fog of war, it can spin out of control.
Yeah, but Congressman Fitzpatrick, she talks about laying on the pain. We've just kind of established it takes a while to lay on the pain. I mean, you know, this could have been
danger here now of a food inflation skyrocketing after wheat, palm oil, and other sectors skyrocket. Okay, Ukraine has just suspended its foreign exchange market. Okay, that came shortly after the other update saying everything was fine.
But we still ought to be giving them everything that they need. And by the way, Trace, we've given them a lot of anti-tank, but no anti-aircraft, no anti-missile defense systems. And look what you're seeing now. They're claiming that they've taken out Ukraine's air defense system. This is a problem. This is why they were asking for Stingers a long time ago. It's why they were asking for Patriot missiles. They've received very little, or if any, they got no Patriots, and they got very few Stingers, and they got them late. But it's important to remember, Trace, and I think Rebecca's spot on. Over half of the Ukrainian population.
Okay, now they're going to limit bank withdrawals in Ukraine. That's going to freak people out to a certain amount per day.
Russia may be able to take Kyiv. They're not going to be able to hold Kyiv or hold Ukraine. It's going to be very ugly. That's really what we're about to see unfold here. And I pray that President Biden is strong.
It looks like, oh my gosh, it looks like the limit is going to be $339 per day for bank withdrawals. That's pretty low. Pretty low. Now limiting cash withdrawals. And some individuals in Ukraine are saying that many are not working and that some have long lines. Some people are robbing people as they're trying to go get money from ATMs now. It's terrible. See, this is why we need crypto.
Ready to fight. And I think it's a crucial choice now for the U.S. and NATO to help Ukraine fight Russia. We're in a whole new world. And thank heavens, we do have our F-35s in Germany. Those are nuclear capable aircraft. We do have tactical nuclear weapons available in Europe to maintain deterrence there. That's ever so much more important. And we've got to be ready and buttoned up in case of a cyber attack that extends beyond Ukraine and reaches to the U.S. or to our NATO allies.
Yeah, and Rebecca Heinrich, I mean, it's a great point because, you know, you look at the chessboard going on over there right now, and the last thing Vladimir Putin wants, I'm sure.
We're now expecting the full package of American sanctions to come tomorrow.
Ukrainians, just Dr. Graham said, this is not even the Ukrainian military that we saw in 2015. It's even more disciplined. It's more unified. It's better trained, stronger sense of Ukrainian identity. This is going to be a tough military. They're brave, they're outgunned, they're outmanned, but they've got lots of courage, lots of heart. They're going to push through. They're going to defend their country, defend their families. And it's our responsibility to just keep giving them the weapons to do that. But again, I just want to put a caution on that. When we do that, we are getting involved. And I think we should do it. But we need to make sure that we are communicating very crystal clear to Vladimir Putin that he better keep his aims more mild. He better not spread them. There was reporting that he was getting kind of near the Polish border. He's got to back away from that Polish border, or we're going to have a major, major problem. All of this is meant to de-escalate, of course, and get us back to a place of peace. Ukrainians are not the ones who did anything wrong here. This was not NATO expansion that did this. This is all on Vladimir Putin and his expansionist aims. He's been telling us what he wants to do for years.